IVM.
This is Audiogyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. Today we have Itu Chaudhuri and Lisa Rath with us on Audiogyan. I believe they don't need any formal introduction in the world of design, but just for our record, Itu and Lisa, a principal at Itu Chaudhuri Designs, a full-stack design agency, bringing powerful design and original thinking to business problems and opportunities. They have engaged in branding, packaging, communication, editorial design for clients all around. To name a few, Indian Express, Outlook Traveler, Nestle, Haldiram, Dr. Reddy, and many more. We'll try and ponder upon a classical question, generalization versus specialization, and document Itu's and Lisa's thought on this, obviously at a meta level, in the context of design and designers in the current time. So, and obviously you can go to icdindia.com for more posts that they have written. Welcome Itu and Lisa to Audiogan. It's a real pleasure to have you guys.
Thank you, Kedar, for having us here.
Awesome.
It's great to be here. And like Lisa said earlier in the warm up to the show, it's wonderful that this is something that you're doing.
Thank you. So I've come up with like few questions, and feel free to chip in. Sort of, it's more of me nudging you towards like the questions which I have. So I'll start off with asking both Itu and Lisa. Maybe Itu, you can go first. That what's your definition of design and how has it changed over time? I mean, this is a question which I keep asking all my guests, because after spending almost 2 to 3 decades working on the same field, our definition, our worldview changes about the same thing. So yeah, if you can start with, yeah, how do you define design, or what's your definition of design?
I think it's one of those wonderful open-ended questions, which I normally answer by saying that there are many ways to practice design. And the important thing is that design is a practice, it's a form of practice. And it's a form of practice which, I mean, in the 20th century, it's been defined as something called reflective making. So if you are into the whole design thinking kind of literature and folklore and mythology, then you would have heard the term reflective making. Nothing wrong with that. In the meantime, sometimes embarrassing to go back, say, 20 years and look at the things that you said. And I did go back some months ago, 20 years, and I found a kind of brochure that we used to give out to clients. And it said something to the effect of, about us. It said that we consider design as just one element in the chain of activities that organizations need to be successful. And I was very impressed. I said that when I was whatever, something like 33 or 32 or something, and I didn't know anything. I mean, my level of innocence was very great compared to 32-year-olds I see now. And I said, hey, this is a line I wouldn't change, this still works.
Interesting. And why do you say? Because, I mean, there is this Zen proverb which I keep sort of repeating in my show as well, which is, when you don't know Zen, rivers are rivers, mountains are mountains. When you're learning Zen, rivers are not rivers, mountains are not mountains. And when you have learned Zen, again, rivers are rivers. So is that the design is just another cog in the wheel? Because there will be a time where you think design is everything, design can change the world, and then you come back to saying, hey, design can change the world, but it's
Yeah, so you're right that the Zen thing about rivers and mountains does apply. And when you see things in their wholeness, then sometimes you realize that even the innocent way in which you first saw it, it was not wrong. And the return to innocence, but this time a kind of learned innocence, or to start out being a child and end up being a child. That's a journey of wisdom,
Yeah.
isn't it? So the effect of learning something in general is instant stupidity, right? So when you learn something, you quickly become stupid. So let's say it's you knew how to speak. Now someone starts teaching you how to speak. The first effect will be a lack of competence, because you will be thinking about how am I supposed to speak instead of doing something that was very natural to you. And then eventually you come back to it and you say, I've gotten past that. And now I do know how to speak, but I can still speak naturally despite having all that knowledge. So I think, yeah, you do come around and rivers become rivers again. That's fair enough. But I think what's the big change that's happened in the last 20 years is this, not for me, for everybody, the whole world, not only for me, is this black box that we do design. You don't know what it is. I know what it is. You tell me something, I'll come and show it to you. And then you say, this is good, this is not good. And then I'll say, okay, from that, I must make out what I'm supposed to do. So I think now there's a improved quality of conversation. The black box is open. We allow you to enter into it and say, shall we talk about this problem that you are having? Shall we talk about possible solutions? Shall we talk about each other's work?
Interesting.
So that's the change.
Interesting. And Lisa, what's your definition? How has it changed?
So disappointingly, mine is very fact oriented and all. I just feel that what's changed for the good in this discipline, at least for me personally, has been that there is a much more open conversation that clients are now willing to have about where they want to apply quote unquote design that they want, and they're willing to engage in a deeper conversation of what needs to be done therefore. So it's not anymore this is what you I want you to do, but it's more like this is my problem, what can you do to solve it? So there is a lot of that I'm seeing in clients nowadays and businesses nowadays, which is nice because they are taking it as a arm of the business in many ways. That this is an important arm of the business, and just like all the other arms, this needs to this will not solve the whole thing, but it's one of the key things. So that is good that has happened. The thing that has changed drastically, which I'm not enjoying anymore at all, and that could be just in our case of what we do and work, is that design is not being taught or seen by young designers as a very big, playground. Everybody wants to quickly know where they fit in and where they belong, and quickly be in a vertical and box themselves up and do only that much. And somehow I'm missing out on the conversations that one used to have, which included a lot of maybe wasted time, but discussing just furniture designers and their work and forms of furniture, and just admiring a furniture designer and his work for an entire day, or even a good product design or a good piece of textile. There used to be time for that, and somehow that was part of design vocabulary or discussions even at work. Slowly I find that that is no longer, like, that's not my department anymore. I can't discuss about a very beautiful furniture form on a table, or it's not something that I as a designer am meant to do, because I am a XYZ designer, UX UI designer, the term I love to hate. But so I find that's also the other side of the design definition that has happened. What I also do find, which has changed a lot, is that everybody's trying to commoditize design now, which wasn't the case earlier. There was there was a need, and then you designed something and you kind of went along with that process of how is it doing for that need? Is it helping that need? Is it aiding that need? I think that has sort of vanished now. It's more about a commodity. What did you come up with? What is the thing? What is that item that I can hold on to? Which is not very, I think it's in that respect, it's closing. The community is closing its own doors on itself. Whereas I find that the businesses are saying, please open the doors and help us with 10 things if you can.
Yeah.
But we ourselves are now tying ourselves down into this is all we will do because this is the item we can produce, kind of a thing. So that is the change I'm seeing, which is making me a bit uncomfortable overall.
Yeah. So
Leave alone wider discussions like what's the difference between a design and a composition. And is Kedar a design or a composition?
interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So here I'm talking about Kedar, the rag, the Hindustani music rag. Is it a composition?
Yeah.
Is it a design? So I would argue for it's a design. So now it's a topic on which interesting discussions are possible, provided people see the job of designing closer to what Lisa was describing. That is like a verb, an area of thinking which is connected with doing. So it's what I've called in another talk a theory of doing. How do you do certain things?
Wow.
And if we are willing to have that discussion. Otherwise, if design is a noun, then you're talking about an object which has been designed. Like this
Phone
is a design. Yeah. But if you think of the iPhone as a design overall, then it's unthinkable without the iPod or iTunes or the App Store.
Even going
or
beyond the logistical chain that they have built.
Correct. So if you think about a bulb as a part of an electrical system that Edison wanted to create, and not the object in itself, like what was the merit of the bulb? So if I talk about razor blades in the context of shavers and then beards, and I know this is the wrong audience, none of us shave to be talking, but I mean, then you're talking about design, you're looking at it as a way of looking at interactions between systems, and then it is becoming a conversation about a way of thinking, which is called design thinking, which is actually not as distinctive as its boosters and hype masters want to make out, but it does have something to say.
Correct.
Right? I mean, it's something nice to say as well. So I think those conversations are not going to happen until designers turn 48 exactly. So how old are you?
I'm 38, 39 actually. Yeah.
You got 9 years. Actually, you made it there 9 years earlier.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is a good segue also because the topic is generalization versus specialization. And I remember this hearing somewhere or like in some talk where the specialization, even in designers, is going so narrower that, yes, they are like, we have coined a word called T-shaped designer, where what's your specialization? And there's a joke, I think, I'm a dentist. So he said, "Oh, which side of the jaw that you fix?" So that's how narrow it's becoming. Maybe we'll zoom out. And Itu, I would like to ask you slightly a long tangential question. Is that we see, and I keep giving this example to my design team also. Gulzar has done almost all sorts of writing, right from jingles to everything. So covered a wide spectrum within literature also. Similarly, say Charlie Chaplin or even the Massimo Vignelli's famous quote that if you can design one thing, you can design everything. Or Satyajit Ray or R.K. Joshi. Like, would you call them generalist or specialist? And then how would you also define these terms? We'll start the ball rolling from here.
Yeah. So I saw this question earlier, and I was kind of dreading answering it because I thought the answer would either be like a minute long, which is to say, of these, only Massimo Vignelli strikes me as a generalist, and let's move on to the next question. Alternately, it could be we could finish answering the question sometime by Friday morning.
Sure.
So I was trying to think of where in between do we fit. So quickly, just to give it some order, I think that what I'm calling a specialist or a generalist needs to be understood historically first. All professional labels have constantly been specializing and then generalizing and then re-specializing and then generalizing again, right? So what you call designer today, that term didn't exist till quite sometime in this century. Even what the colleges in the last century, sorry, in the 20th. So the colleges that taught it also didn't use the word design till about 1950, where places like Ulm and Bauhaus began using the term a bit earlier, but became mainstream by, let's say, 1960. You have NID being created. JJ still isn't calling it design, right? Just to take an example. No, by 1960 they were not. I'm sure they now are. But so professions have always been doing this, right? Whether it's in medicine or in science or anything. So this is not new that we'll zoom out, zoom in, etc. In this context, if I say generalist, I mean somebody who moves some distance away from his field and doesn't necessarily partake in a second vertical or doesn't necessarily develop a skill, but develops his practice in such a way that his own practice, his own earlier practice, is simply one of the possible responses to the question that he is now asking. No? Okay, let's say I'm practicing A. Okay, and now I say A is actually a part of B. So I am now thinking about B. A is a part of B, but so is C a part of B. So is D a part of. These are all connected, and I need to think about them all. So it's my participation in one or two of them doesn't make me a generalist. That makes me a Renaissance man. कि मैं थोड़ा ये भी करता हूँ, मैं वो भी करता हूँ, मैं ये भी करता हूँ, वाह कितनी अच्छी बात है. That's a different thing. Generalist means I'm not really involved with any of these. मैंने सारे verticals त्याग दिए. I'm looking at this horizontal thing on top and I'm trying to attack this big problem.
Is it sort of trying to abstract the problem statement which lies almost everywhere?
Exactly. This is not a video podcast, so you can't see my thumbs up, but yes, that's exactly it. So maybe Massimo Vignelli said, I am a designer at large. And indeed, he did do furniture. He did do products, which from our point of view seems terribly different, right? But he's not the only designer who's done more than one thing. So Miyake, who died just, 1 week ago, he also mucked about that as well. So Issey Miyake is an example. So that's a definition that is interesting. I'm not saying that's a definition that's correct. That's a definition by which one can get to somewhere useful, saying, am I attacking a wider category of problem? And that is what design thinking is trying to do, right? It's trying to take a step back and say, wait, what is all this a part of? And that is what Vignelli means when he says, if you can design one thing, you can design everything. Or the way a friend of mine puts it, he said he likes our work because you don't care what you're designing. You start the same way for everything. And yeah, at some level, that's true. Once you acquire the confidence to it, you say, I don't know the first thing about microphones, the one I can see in your picture, but you know what? I can find out. It's not that big a deal. I know what it does.
But sorry to interrupt, but does it mean that you have to, because I'm also connecting this Rahim's quote, which I found recently, and in fact in one of the movies, कि एक साधो सब साधो, right?
Correct. Sab sadho
Yeah,
ek.
एक साधे सब साधो, right? So does it mean that to become a generalist you have to at least master one thing, or is it like you can be a generalist? In fact, that's my follow-up question came along, but yeah.
So I think you definitely can be a generalist without being a specialist in any one thing. But if you are a specialist in something, it does give an interesting depth or dimension to what you do.
Beautiful, interesting, cool. Uh,
Think of an IAS officer who used to be a geographer or studied history or physics.
Physics, I'm finding it tough to connect, but yeah, history, I got it.
Or
Yeah,
engineering.
yeah.
So it's not that he'll directly use those things, it's that he will use many of the tools he has learned. It's a toolkit or a thinking toolkit. I trained as an architect. I'm not trained as what you guys call a designer. I'm trained in the real thing. Okay. So now, what that gives you, architecture, is a way of taking very large problems and saying, hang on, it's made up of smaller ones. And I know how to subdivide it. It's an instinct. You describe very complex objects like buildings or ships in a very systematic way. It's a thinking skill.
Yeah, now I can sort of very correlate this, because just yesterday I was having a conversation with a friend, and he said most physicists then turn philosophers because they are dealing with time very closely. So they automatically abstract at that level of understanding time as well.
Correct.
Cool. Lisa, I wanted to just like take this forward and ask you, like, again, I saw one more video where Steve Jobs was saying Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci were like not really strategizing 5 years ahead, but doing and thinking, which you spoke about earlier, doing and thinking together, right? So, and with the changing sort of paradigm in the design world currently, what are your thoughts on sort of how important is doing and thinking in this current time, and uh, what has changed during the course of, say, maybe last 10, 20 years, or maybe bigger timeline also?
So I think, thankfully, I know both who is Leonardo and Michelangelo, and read books about them at an early age. No, I'm just joking. But actually, I think if I have to just connect both the questions a bit, because to me they are connected. See, you mentioned Satyajit Ray and Gulzar. Now they worked with a specific profession in mind. They did things because they had to earn. They were not artists where they said we'll produce something and if somebody likes it, they will buy it, and I can make it like Picasso or I cannot. They were very specific whether they were doing covers or writing a jingle or a film script or whatever. But however, if you zoom out and look at Satyajit Ray, who I hugely admire, of course, uh, there's a holistic approach to the whole thing, to the world of writing, literature, and engaging with an audience. So whether it's through storytelling in written words that his grandfather and father did, through the limericks and the poems that his father wrote, or through the advertising work that he did, and subsequently the film scripts he wrote and the comic strips he made, etc. It was always trying to tell a story to an audience. So they had that kind of what designers want, a brief and a output. They did have that. They have a brief, you have to tell a story, an interesting story to this audience. So they had that relationship. However, if you look at his body of work and what he did and how he did it, he was completely immersed in it in a very generalist way. No, it did not bother him that today he's writing a story, tomorrow he's doing his own movie's poster, which I don't think in his mind he was thinking, now I'm a graphic designer, and how is my typography going to look on this poster? It was just him communicating in various media through words, through picture, through form and composition. And that composition sense comes into his, every frame of his film, the color palette or whatever lighting comes into his drawings, translates into his films. So whether he was doing in today's profession, if he was a art director for Sanjay Leela Bansali, if that was his profession, he would have still worked in that fashion. So it is about immersion, I think. So Leonardo, Michelangelo were completely immersed, going to the graveyard, pulling out bodies to study the muscle, and then say, I'm going to make this look exactly like this, and actually do it. Not, if somebody wanted to learn, come along. I don't want apprentice, or I'm not trying to teach you anything. I am doing it and I want to master this. So, getting into that, the beginning of that whole thing is important. So if you look at any of these guys you named in the earlier question or now, these are people who were in depth married to that subject. It was not something because my father did, I should also do. I'm an ironsmith's son, so I should become an ironsmith. It wasn't from there at all. It was something that was their own calling, and they took to it, and they made it a point to learn everything in that horizontal way about it, whether it's the aims like we have been taught and studied about. They did everything, and they found things, discovered things along the way. They kept learning and they kept teaching and they kept applying, and they did buildings to chairs to many things, textile, many things. But because they had immersed themselves in that horizontal, whatever you call it, generalist education, or the education or the knowledge of design. I think that is missing now, and it's being advocated to vanish now, which is very scary. I
So,
find that it's being strictly advocated. Now, forget it. You are in a vertical, and in that vertical, I mean, left jaw and right jaw, I think it's now become molar or, wisdom tooth. Which one? It's becoming that specialized, which is very scary. I think you can't do design and look at the whole big picture. Even to do the small thing, I would imagine that it needs a overall understanding. It's important. It can't be taken away.
but do you think this sort of specialization is, I mean, it's a need of the hour just for productivity, or it's just the way education has been shaping up?
No, it's the productivity demand that is pushing educators to rephrase and rethink how they are uh, catering to this need and demand in the market. And that in turn is skewing the education that the young designers are receiving. And, unfortunately, I seriously feel that design and art and these two disciplines and music and even studying literature is not something that can be forced on you. It's not one of the things you can do in life. If kuch nahi bana to ye karo, because it is something that has to be your inner calling. The moment it's not your inner calling and you're doing it because, okay, let's do it, there are a lot of options here, it becomes one of those things that then you want it to be defined. What am I going to do? What is going to become of me? Where will I land? What is the usual worldly kind of setup for the future in this thing? And that's where I think it's now, I won't call it as a design education or vocation. It's more like doing, I want to do a CA. My father is a CA. I will also have to do CA. That's still continuing in our country. My father is a doctor. If I study hard enough, I'll also make it as a doctor. It's not something that it's an inner calling. It's something that runs in the family, a lawyer's son, lawyer. It still happens in that way. So a lawyer's son breaks away and says, "No, I won't do this, or I want to do this." At least he should or she should have that calling of that discipline. Otherwise, they're not allowed or they're not encouraged. So I
Correct.
think that is a very important thing, whether you specialize or not, to recognize that about yourself is important. That do I have this as a calling?
Yeah, I think
No, so you
no.
can specialize thereafter because life takes its own course and you don't never know where you land up. But it
Correct.
has to be that थोड़ा दिल धड़कना चाहिए डिजाइन में.
करेक्ट करेक्ट इनफैक्ट इसमें थोड़ा सा और एक थोड़ा और डाइग्रेशन भी हो जाएगा बट आई रिमेंबर वन पॉडकास्ट आई डिड विथ विक्रम गेलोट हुज अ एजुकेटर एंड ही सेड आई वांटेड टू बी अ डॉक्टर बट nobody told me that doctor's job is also like a detective. Everyone told me that you have to cut a frog and cut a human body and stuff like that, so I never went for like doctor, but it's also like trying to detect what the disease is, and it could be Sherlock Holmes type setup also. So unless you're sort of exposed to that side of things, or
Philosophy.
the yeah, the different facets of being in a particular profession or doing some job, I think that's also. So maybe I'll pick this thread and ask Itu, is that because it's a productivity driven sort of time right now, what do you think should be like a career ladder also for a designer? Obviously not in the typically UI UX में आगे चल के in that sense, but like how sort of important is mastering the base craft, because craft as a word also has been missing these days. So there is certain, be it anatomy, be it structural things, be it like simple stuff, but there's some base layer to learn, and then you grow in, and then you probably end may generalize. But like how would you define or how would you envision like a career ladder for a designer?
I used to be a big proponent of this point of view. I'm a little less certain of that point of view now.
Okay.
So if you ask my father, he would say drawing is the base of everything. And basically, if you draw, and I don't care if you're 50 years old or how great you are, but drawing is what you will do. And it's drawing is the place where everything starts. And there's a lot of truth to it. When we talk about teaching graphic design, the way in which graphic design curricula developed, this is after Ulm and the Bauhaus and so on, they, that is to say, the graphic design curricula that influenced what we do today, how those developed. So they developed by teaching typography. Right? So the idea was you taught design through typography. For a bunch of reasons, that isn't the case anymore. There are a number of reasons for this. It's to do with the fact that, say, images have assumed a different level of importance. It's to do with the fact that media have evolved in certain ways. It's to do with how we are consuming things, how we are eating things. So I'm not sure what is that craft set today, and that if I had to write a craft set today, that you must know these things, what would I say? How much weight would I give typography and drawing, two things very dear to my heart? How much of, so if you ask me to teach design today, I would still teach it. I would start from typography and I would still start from teaching it that way. I can justify it easily. On the other hand, is it the best way? Is it the way that kids are practicing today? Should it be the way kids are practicing today? Do they have to know what I spent painful years knowing? I'm not sure. So I think we need to go back and think what type of visuality is there in the world today, and therefore what sort of visual skills do we need to develop today? I don't know.
I sort of agree, but I don't know. Yeah, even when I was teaching couple of my friends some design. I said, just listen to Bob Dylan for like next 2 months, just one song over and over again. So there would be something, right? Something base, no?
Yeah, but I don't know what that is. Suppose you came to me and said, I have 2 years. Sorry, YEARS, not years for Bob Dylan, but I have 2 years for you. What will you tell me to do? So I will say, look, come and join my practice because you'll learn a lot here, and we do lots of different things. Just stick around, keep your eyes and ears open, keep your hands moving. We'll see how your interests develop, and we'll make something good out of it. Now, I can say this, but this would be a statement coming from my, personal confidence that things will work out. But if you ask me as a structured question, what is that knowledge base? What should kids know? How do I build a base? I'm a lot less confident about answering it.
Today.
Today. Yeah. Yes. I'm kind of open to rethinking this whole issue. Maybe I would include things that should have been there. Learn to code. Acquire even a baby's level of familiarity with coding. Maybe it's a base skill today.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, maybe at the base skill, I would come down to simple aesthetic things like write a poem, read a poem, tell me what you like, awaken the senses. So when I say base, now I would not be getting to the base of a craft. I'd be getting down to the base of personal properties, personal attributes, develop your own opinions. So, I mean, these are so general that I don't know what I don't know whether in this context, in this conversation, these are of value. They are very valuable. I think everyone should write a poem.
Yeah.
I say it all the time, learn to code, write a poem, carry a sketchbook.
Yeah.
Draw everything you see.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe.
I spend a lot of time drawing. It's very often air drawing. I do a lot of that. And, so it's...
So
are these particularly useful? I don't know. I mean, there's value in your saying, listen to Bob Dylan for 2 months. I would change that to say, listen to something you like repeatedly, so much that it's coming out of your ears. Now, tell me something about it. I think that's very useful.
Yeah.
One day we'll make a thinker out of you. And if you can do that, you can solve design problems. You can do strategy.
I think this sort of connects with Lisa's sort of immersion, right? You have to go really deep till things seep into you, and then like you sort of, whenever you talk, it's coming out.
Correct. And yet it's an accident, right? I cannot tell you that. Probably it's just luck. Probably I've been lucky to meet 5 or 6 influential individuals who had an influence on me. And maybe it's luck that I was receptive to them, and that, having said luck, it's not like I've won the lottery either, So I don't know how lucky I've been. But so in fact, what I'm saying is, I don't know if these prescriptions that I have are worth anything.
Lisa, what are your thoughts like on sort of? In fact, I had just like written down like, does also specialization come like linearly, as in, but Itu has taken a different direction, so you want to just.
No, I think specialization in design, again, I would say, for those who have taken a specialization before the generalization, and there are a lot of that people you meet and see who have directly jumped into a specialization and then try and understand the world that surrounds that specialization. That's one way to go, and nothing wrong with that. However, if you, in my view, it just feels, and I might be wrong, but I just feel that before specialization, being a generalist and not just generalist for that discipline. So if you're a product designer, being a generalist for product, I mean just design as a whole. And when I say design as a whole, I'm including architecture and furniture and pottery and everything, bits of the world of art too. I think it's nice to know what that world is all about. It's nice to know what is so great about the Japanese art and culture and ceramic and everything, though you may not practice that ever, but it's good to know. It's good to know that, these are the things that in some part of the world are studied in this way or executed in this way or understood in this way. And I think that what that does is it may not be applicable when you're doing a UX UI project directly, but it keeps you informed as a human being of how to think. And one of the things in design we've always thought and learned and read is that there is no formula. Something comes in front of you and you have to solve it for that situation, that product, that problem, and all. So when I now see a formula being applied, I get wary of it. That is this design or is this something else? Because I've been asked to apply a formula. And maybe that's the right way. That's the fifth dimension of design that we didn't learn or practice. And that is a new thing that will come with time and age, and we should be accepting of it. But it is then another branch of design. Let's be very clear that applying formula and producing design is another branch of design. It might be right, it might fit an entire industry and so on and so forth. But we have to be aware that that's not the definition of design, or that's not the new definition of design. There's still that bigger world out there of understanding, exploring, admiring other things other than your own core day-to-day work, just admiring and watching other people's work and seeing what you take out of it. There is no pressure. Nobody's asking you to perform something of that sort the next day. So if you are under no pressure. So if you're following, for example, I follow this fine person from Japan. I don't know who she or he is, but they do some very fantastic work on denim. In a very Japanese thing. Now it's just caught my fancy that you see this person pursuing with this one thing every day and producing something new. And you also see that sense of Japanese craft and culture embedded in that work, but it's different. And you don't know whether you want to classify it as art, or is she a textile designer, or is she producing garments for sale or museum pieces, God knows what, but they are very interesting stuff to watch and see the color palette and the sensibility of composition. It's very enlightening to see some other part of the world, somebody is doing something in such a focused way, which is so different than what I do every day. And yet there is some connection, some, heart calls for that work and it draws to it. So generalist in that sense is important. I think studying art history, design history is good.
But do you think this can be trained, or it, as you said, you need that calling? So
I think you have to have the calling, and then yes, it can be trained. Definitely can be trained, but the calling has to be there. Some people just don't have the calling for it. And some people just deeply feel for it. You can't help but feel for it. So, you can't push somebody to listen to classical music if there is no calling whatsoever. But if there is even the slightest calling, then you can thereafter push the child into that direction. And so that little bit of calling has to be there. I think it's there for every subject. I have a nephew who is doing something major in physics and maths in some college in the US, and we've stopped asking him what he does because we don't understand. But what I like about his replies to how things are going is that, solving or getting marks is not the point. That beauty of that solution I didn't get. I didn't get the somebody seeing beauty in maths. I would have never thought of it like that, but somebody there out there is seeing beauty in maths. Yeah.
Very inspiring.
I think the question is, how do you become the kind of person that Lisa is?
So true.
No, no. Let me be serious about this. Or indeed, Abhishek or Ayushman or yourself. So, if you say I'm getting a lot out of looking at this Japanese artist working on denim, so how do you become the sort of person who will get something out of that? How do you become the sort of person who doesn't walk past it and say, "Ah, अच्छा था, सुंदर था,"
एक like कर दिया
and
बस.
right? So how now that is attacking something very fundamental, and we have to use terms like calling, which we cannot define, and it's very fundamental to education at large. It's not about design, it's not about generalism, it's not about specialization. It gets right down to the question of personal development. Can you can you make your mind open to things, so that maybe it wasn't denim for you, maybe it was Bob Dylan for you, or whatever it was for you, right? So that, how do you give somebody that experience, or if they've had that experience, can you build on it? So I think that's the job of a teacher, that's the job of a guru, or that's the job of yourself to be your own guru, if you like. So I think if you're talking about such fundamental things, then talking about it in terms of practice or practical things is probably not so practical. I mean, it amounts to saying, it amounts to being disappointed with people who are not like you. What good is that? So can you do that? So I think that's a very going to the root of what human development is. I don't know if that's the direction in which you'd want to take a conversation like this.
No, it's very fascinating because I remember when I was exposed to classical music, I didn't understand anything. Still, I don't understand anything. But I just forced myself voluntarily to listen to Begum Akhtar because little lightweight, the words were interesting, and then slowly, like maybe right now, I'm like settled on Kumar Gandharv and Bob Dylan. I don't understand both of them, but just keep listening to them over and over. I mean, there will be something which is going to happen over time. So you just keep exposing yourself to
Yeah.
that. Maybe that's
सुनता है ज्ञानी.
yeah. So एक just ऐसी again I'm like nudging Itu to sort of क्या होना चाहिए type direction questions, but this I thought while just framing these questions also कि जैसे artist में commercial artist और fine artist है, वैसे do you think like a fine designer kind of a field will help? क्योंकि कमर्शियल फिर वही करते रहेंगे, ब्रीफ है, काम करो, पैसा लो अपना
नहीं,
एंड
देखो वो बहुत ही बड़ी बात है. सो द आप जो कमर्शियल जिसको बोल रहे हो ना, सो कमर्शियल म्यूजिशियंस में देखते हैं बीटल्स, ठीक है, बेटोवन, बाक, मोज़ार्ट, मतलब अल्लादिया खान, ये सब कमर्शियल थे. ये सब ना अपनी रोजी रोटी के लिए अपना आर्ट इम्प्रूव कर रहे थे. So first of all, that's one. I used to joke at one time हम लोग रोटीग्राफी करते हैं. But so but the fact is, that's the field for which the word design has been created. It has been created to intervene in the real world of things people need. So that is its fundamental goal. Now, you may have critiques of how it is practiced, and I have no problem with that. And therefore, you may wish to practice design like art with the idea of commenting on it. It's something that's been done, right? There's that pair, English Australian, that's not coming to mind just now. What they call speculative design.
okay. No, I'm not aware.
And speculative, there's written a very fine book. I have that book. It's called Speculative Everything. The names will come back to me shortly. So they make objects that are fundamentally useless, or they make objects that are intended to provoke people.
The Philip Stark type, the lemon, or they are still little
No,
commercial.
that could be used. That could be used. I'm saying, see, design is for utility. This takes away the utility.
Oh, okay.
So let's say I make a teapot, and there is a
Yes.
ceramic artist who did this also, made a teapot with a hole at the bottom. So the point is to say it is about the form of a teapot. You cannot use it as a teapot. So don't even try. Yeah, but this is to tell you something.
Is it Anthony Dune and Fiona Rabi?
That's right. So Dunn and Rabi. So yeah, so they are one way of looking at it. On the other hand, you have artists like Itu Chaudhuri, the ceramic artist, who insists that if her work isn't used, तो it has not played its full part in the cycle of life. मतलब the purpose of my work was to be used. Even if that use is display, but ideally that use is something you used, right? You see, if you grew a plant in a planter, even better, right? So both are good approaches. In the end, what you're trying to do, I mean, let's not go away from the fact that design evolved from craft. Design is about improving craft. It is a specialization that became possible after hunter-gatherer societies settled down as agricultural societies. And it made space for people to specialize. In hunter-gatherer societies, you could not specialize. The only specialization was survival. So, or murder maybe was vaguely specialized. But it is agriculture that created time, it created surpluses, it created many things. But on the good side, it created specialization. And a job could be, a guy could do a job making utensils instead of working in the field. Or I could be used to improve the standard of a plow, which was used in the field. Right? And then this evolution is still true today in the 20th century. You're improving things that are already being made by others, and you're turning them towards specific ends. And it's become more and more refined and changed. But the fundamental thing is this, is that's not going away. If that goes away, we will not be calling it design. No? We'll have to have some other word for it. So design as art exists for purposes of commentary. And that's perfect. I have no problem with that. Like I have no problem with the person. I think you've seen the French artist. As a UI designer, you've read The Design of Everyday Things, right? And on the cover of that book, there is that impossible teapot, the teapot from which you cannot pour anything, and all of those jokes, doorknobs that deliberately don't work. So now, if those things are used as commentary and you want to call that design, pretty much like what Dunn and Rabi are doing, then it's got a place. But that has a place because there is this business called design, which is rooted in utility. What you are calling commercial, with a little bit of disapproval, of which I have a little bit of disapproval. We should not disapprove of this commerce, because not because our livelihoods depend on it, because that is what it was created for.
But then you mentioned about like improving the plow, right? वो नहीं हो रहा है ना आज, like because you are in this like treadmill.
No,
I'm sure like
अगर वो नहीं हो रहा है तो आप ढूंढिए ना कहाँ पे लगाना है. Lot of people are thinking about this, that there are already enough toothbrush designs in the world, and then IDEO comes along and says, wait, but they aren't good enough. And I used to laugh at Lisa, who used to complain कि मेरे हाथ दुखते हैं इस toothbrush से. And I used to say, what is this हाथ दुखते हैं toothbrush से? I mean, you know. And then some years later, I read about IDEO creating a toothbrush exactly for people like her. It started out with creating something for older people and children, but the lessons learned from that, they got applied to toothbrushes for everybody. So if you have a toothbrush which is fat and has a slightly rubbery grip, you know, so it came out of that. So things are being improved. Now you may not think that's important, and that's fine with me. We can argue about what's important, and to some extent the market, or what I would call capitalism or any kind of a market, would determine what is important, would give the hint to everybody else what is important. So I'm not saying markets are a perfect way to decide anything. I'm just saying they are a way to decide something. But our craft is rooted in utility. हम जो करते हैं, it is about utility. It may employ skills that we see in the artist.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of convinced कि fine designers नहीं होने चाहिए.
नहीं
नहीं
होने चाहिए. Fine
as in
designers
like,
means what?
हाँ मतलब fine as in मैं जो fine artist के connotation में बोल रहा था कि
बिल्कुल. Why not? There's plenty of ways to practice design. No? Suppose I make a book which is worth 25,000 bucks. It's got 10 pages and it's a wonderful art object. There's only one copy of it. And somebody values that book. I am absolutely cool with it. I'm just saying, but that book wouldn't exist had not the book first existed as a utilitarian object which very, very few people could afford. And then someone came along and invented something, not design, invented something which made it possible for lots of people to afford. Then other people began designing the book to make it better.
no, but then still that fine design, that one piece is still form of an art because it's probably one.
Correct, but it exists because of the other thing.
But I can push what
The book would not exist if people were not using books. The fine art book would not exist. It would be an entirely new creation and people would say, wow, what is this amazing thing?
अच्छा नहीं अपन वो दूसरी डायरेक्शन में चले गए कि then what comes first and whatever like वो
Correct. It's a trap. I'm the hunter. Yeah.
So I said I can take the example of the toothbrush ahead and say that fine design also has a role to play. Like if I was to design a toothbrush, which I keep designing in my head every day, is because I'm keen to move to an eco-friendly toothbrush for myself and the family. However, every time I've gone and purchased a bamboo toothbrush, I found it that it doesn't live beyond 4 days or 5 days. And economically, it's not making sense for me to keep chucking and buying more. And I've been thinking for a very long time that why can't I make a screw head bamboo toothbrush, where the heads come separately and they come like the other commercial toothbrushes come, which is in hard, soft, medium.
Didn't you find one?
No. So now, is that if somebody was to produce something like that, maybe that toothbrush set will cost you 600 bucks as opposed to the 30 rupees plastic toothbrush. But is there a market for it? Yes, there is a market for it. And should somebody do that, pursue that, and also coexist with the 15 rupee toothbrush? Yes, it should. So I think essentially
that's not fine design, is it? Is that fine design?
Yeah, in the sense it's not something that the world is crying for or demanding, or nobody is. It's a fussy thing. I mean, nobody. I'm sure it's not been done because it's fussy to produce, etc.
No, but I would call it evolution, right? Evolution of that product, the way it's happening over time. It's not like that leapfrog sort of, as you word, invented.
Yeah, but it's like not using glue in joinery. It's a philosophy. But if you use, your product, the same product can be 1/5 the cost. Just because you have that philosophy and you're doing something else as a philosophical thing, it's costing me 5 times. Now, is that fine design? Is it a evolved design? Is it what? I don't know. But it has its own appeal, and there are people takers for that as well as no takers for that kind of a thing. So I think also the line between art and design should be clear in people's mind. So if we start blurring that, then we are in a difficult terrain, I would say, because that's where it gets a bit tricky.
Correct, correct.
If you start doing per se art.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Maybe we'll jump like few questions in the interest of time. And again, Itu, like just wanted to ask this bit, which is again quite interesting, is when you speak about say generalization or even specialization, is it sort of a good, or do you have any observations about designers coming in laterally to solve certain things, like in your overall experience, uh, designers coming laterally or going laterally, has it sort of shown any difference or any pattern in what they do or what impact they bring?
Naturally, their impact is much greater.
Why?
Significant progress in any field is made by outsiders. Okay, people who are not schooled in the rules of a particular field. If you look at Nobel prizes that are awarded, so many of them are awarded because the researchers had a gap in their knowledge, and they collaborated with somebody else to fill that gap. Okay, so if you look at the history of one of the most important Nobel prizes given is for the discovery of the structure of deoxyribonucleic acid or DNA.
I'm not aware.
DNA, what we
Yeah,
call
yeah,
DNA,
yeah.
right? That famous
Yeah, the
DNA.
intertwined whatever strand of.
Huh. So this came about because a biologist collaborated with a physicist who didn't know anything about the problem, and he was just bored sitting around Cambridge. He was doing a PhD in Cambridge. He was bored and spending the time bored with his own PhD and spending his time drinking beer. And while drinking beer, he met uh, Sir Francis Crick. And so Watson and Crick. So he said, "What are you working on?" He says, "This is what I'm trying to solve." He says, "That doesn't sound so hard." So he said, "Pagal ho kya?" So he said, "Nahi, itna mushkil nahi hai. Let's have a chat. It sounds like fun. Let's do it." And 4 or 5 months later, they had done it. Within 8 or 9 months, they had published, and I think they got the Nobel the next year or something. So gate crashers are always going to make progress. Okay. And that's the attraction that you're seeing of designers in this so-called C-suite in companies, that you want to have not just a chief design officer, but by the way, Silicon Valley expansion of chief design officer, CDO, is career definitely over. So not because you just, but if you look at the companies that have been started by designers, like say Airbnb, for example. So lateral entrants, people thinking about bringing something, another discipline into another, they're always going to be the ones that will make significant progress. So lateral entry is required in design. We will dry up without it. Similarly, lateral exit, what you mean is, how does design contribute in some other field? So I think you're seeing that a lot. You're seeing that a lot in business. And I think the more that happens, the better it is for everybody. So I'm terribly enthusiastic about that.
Got it. And
people call me a lateral entrant
because of architecture.
Because of architecture, and I keep telling them, since when is architecture not design? Ek minute, so it's like someone was talking. I think who was talking? Was it you about Lisa about maths and beauty?
Yeah, Lisa was talking.
After I realized what it is, I tell people maths के सामने कोई beauty नहीं है. मतलब maths ही beauty है. एक maths है, एक music है, बाकी सब इधर उधर खेल रहे हैं.
So true. मैं तो अभी म्यूजिक पे
It's
हूँ.
a
हाँ.
it's a provocative point of view. I don't mean it as a serious statement, which I will state in a court of law, but it comes from that space. It comes from that. So in the same way, I would say yes. Lateral entry ही तो entry है ना, मतलब यहीं से तो fresh thoughts आते हैं.
Yeah, maybe like the next one Lisa के लिए इसी के ऊपर था, but the question sounds a bit tactical and trivial, but I'll just like try my luck connecting with this sort of same thread is that जैसे CDO Itu said कि like you have this culture right now designers are, और ये तो बहुत क्लीशे वर्ड भी हो गया है कि डिज़ाइनर्स नीड सीट एट द टेबल. मेरा पर्सनल एजेंडा है कि यार वो तो अर्न करो और मिल जाएगी. तो so how do you earn that bringing purely मतलब apart from bringing your craft and like sensibilities of design and a bit of aesthetics, ये basic चीज़ें छोड़ के like how do you sort of bring that weight or value or whatever you call for design to the main sort of conversation of numbers and business and क्योंकि ये अगर सेंसिटिव नहीं रहेंगे तो देन वील बी लिविंग इन लाइक एज डिज़ाइनर्स वील बी लिविंग इन आवर ओन बबल ऑफ नहीं नहीं सब यूज़र के लिए हैं. एंड I realized my hard way working at leadership levels that yes, business is equally important. Revenue numbers are important. So if you want to just give some light on that.
So I think as designers, I have been asked many times this question about is design and art the same and all that, and I'm very clear that it's not. So I can call myself a designer to some extent, but definitely not an artist because I'm here to solve problems. And when we say we are solving problems, it's wrong to say we are solving problems only for the end user. There's an end user before the end user also, which is the business, which is the person who started this business and what are their desired outcomes of this business. That has to be understood, that has to be felt for. If you don't feel for that, you are in the wrong place. You should be able to identify that because not everybody fits everywhere. But once you've identified with the business and say, yes, I understand why they are there and why they need this and why they're trying to do the XYZ things that they're saying they wish to do, your valuable inputs will come along. It will not be a standalone solution. You cannot, as a human being, you cannot not let your thinking and decisions be impacted by what you've heard, seen, absorbed, and sympathized with. You have to sympathize with that cause. So there are many disciplines within design that we practice, at least especially with me and Itu, because we don't do any one vertical alone. That in those verticals, you start seeing a pattern emerging and almost a formula emerging. And that's when you start worrying that why do you need the same formula as the other, given that your product is not the same? It might be belonging to the same vertical, but it's not the same. Your business strategy is not the same. Your product is not the same. So can we think a bit about from your perspective? And also that is very important that you show and demonstrate and actually feel the difference in the business that you are in. Whosever table you're sitting at, you have to feel for that business and understand the number value, because after all, everybody is here to earn their bread, butter, and a little bit of jam. So there's nothing wrong in trying to understand that and produce things. So is the film shown at the Cannes Festival much superior than your ad that you see on the television as effort or solution? It's quite a questionable thing because the ad on the TV you just saw, whether you liked it or you didn't like it or whatever your appreciation or criticism is, it was done for a specific purpose. Has it met that purpose? Is it going to meet that purpose? And then the craft comes in. But first, that benchmark has to, kind of get dealt with. You cannot run around it, or you can't say that's not my problem. It's very much your problem if you want a seat at the table. And I think that's why many artists don't want that seat at the table, because it affects their art. It affects their way of thinking, So a lot of artists, as we all know, didn't make that money for which their art today sells for.
Yeah.
Somebody else made that money. Somebody else was sitting at that table and deciding the value or the need or everything. The person was making art and lived the life and went away. So if we want a seat at the table, we better be aligned. And in our case, we have that leeway of excusing ourselves if we are not aligned. But once we are on board, then we have to align to that thing. And I think once real clients and businesses who sense that and see that are very appreciative of that. There is a lot of space for that. There is a lot of room for that. It's about the community now gearing towards that.
And over period, I think it will also happen that because of your experience and because of the body of work that you have done, it sort of, you can demand certain things in certain interests, keeping the social angle or keeping like whatever user first and others things. But I think that first
We don't say user anymore, no? That's the first thing you should stop saying.
it's a consumer.
Yeah, customer, consumer, the guy who pays. Now they'll listen. So I think the way to do that is to actually learn the language of business. And it's a very learnable thing. You learn you don't have to do an MBA to do that. You can learn the language of business. And by doing that, you'll be able to communicate with the seat at the table, whatever, the gatekeepers, in a language that they understand. And that is the language of what you might call the economics of the business, and connect it up with what you do. There is no way that they will not listen.
True.
But you have to learn that.
Correct.
And there are a lot of nuances to such questions. I mean, we will not be able to do justice with our answers because there are a lot of nuances. Obviously, every time you say specialization and generalization, nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, the UX, UI designers, which have caused this churn to happen in this discipline. I think that is the one specialization that has caused a lot of heartburn and in the are you a designer or not kind of a thing. But I think of course it's a specialization, it's a need, it's a branch of design that has been kind of, it's just been discovered. It was always there. It's been discovered as a branch and then given a form and a structure to become a very specialized vocation where application is very predefined. So that is what is making a lot of older designers feel very uncomfortable.
Correct.
But having said that, even in that very narrow thing, there's a lot of room to think, design, play, push, challenge. I love it when every time we have clients who for the 6 months of this project say, oh, Airbnb dekho, bahut sahi. And then after 6 months, Airbnb goes and changes this whole thing, because those 6 months one has been trying to tell them maybe they are unhappy with what they have and they are also re-looking at what they have. So let's do what we are conclusively coming around to for our product and not look at them so much. So it proves at that point that no, there is room in this too. And let's not bucket it and formalize it and all that. So it is again for designers to push that boundary and find that space in that much, that very narrowly defined vertical, and say, no, there is more to the specialization than just following 10 steps.
Absolutely.
I think that has caused a lot of these kind of questions and anxiousness in the community. Even students, when we go to teach, are very worried. Should we just specialize in UX, UI? I said, go ahead and do it. There is nothing wrong or great or anything about it. It's about how you will apply it.
Correct, correct. No, in fact, what I've resorted right now to the definition is my like Clear Trip where I was working. उनके जो founder है, he's also designer. तो Rush Bhatt. He said a designer should know how to code, design and write copy. ये
Absolutely.
तीनों हैं मतलब फुल स्टैक फिल लाइक वो फुल डिजाइन है अब वैसे क्लियर ट्रिप में थे आज नहीं मिल रहे हमको वैसे लोग
हाँ पर क्योंकि इतना डिमांड है कि तुम बस इतना ही करो दैट्स व्हाई आई वाज
Correct.
आस्किंग यू बिफोर दिस बिकॉज आई वी लाफ दैट नाउ वी नीड अ प्रोडक्ट राइटर एंड अ यूएक्स माइक्रो कॉपी राइटर it's getting too specialized,
Yeah.
I mean, no, it's a full product and you should be able to describe it, and everything is getting specialized and therefore I think also gets a bit distorted about what that role can achieve. It might be a very simple thing done effectively.
Correct.
It's not.
Oops, something went wrong.
Yeah, it is not something that the person needs to produce a lot of work for to arrive there. So it's there's too much definition and specialization is distorting a lot of things. So if that is kept to a smaller, tighter thing, like Rush said, it's very correct because even in our office, Itu constantly says that what do you mean by a copywriter? If you can't write, then you can't design, then you can't do typography because you're not connecting with the printed words.
Yeah.
Read if you don't read. Just
So, nilly-willy, everybody gets their arm twisted in our office to say, right, no, write what you want to say. Okay, it will get improved, but write what you want to, basically say. And eventually it does work because
you only learn something by writing.
Yeah.
so
Yes.
that is
Can we write a poem called Ayushman? Next poem project.
one.
The title of the poem is "Oops, something went wrong."
Yeah, we do that. In I'll take that as a sort of a exercise. Cool.
Haiku.
Yeah, we can do that. Oops, something went wrong. Anyway, I think Itu and Lisa, I think I'll conclude with one last question, which is, this can keep on and on as Itu said till Friday morning, but just to conclude, how do you see sort of future of design in India? I know it's a bigger, again, like a little cliche question, but you guys have like seen some real good timeline of design. How would you see the future? Like, do we need more specialists? Do we need actually? The topic is trending towards generalist more. Yeah, and any thoughts on which area? Maybe that could be a separate question, but how do you see future of design? What would you like to have rather than what would happen?
So I think design is a natural relationship between people who make things and people who use them. And I don't think we need to do anything for it. We don't need to save design. We don't need to change design. We don't need to reform design. We need to make sure that the forces that transmit from this exchange between people who make things, people who use things, people who need things, that there is no friction in that transmission. So people who make things quickly understand what people who want things need. And as long as that is happening, design will look after itself, as it always has, because it is fundamentally utilitarian in its nature. So we don't need to rescue design, save design, improve design. What we need to do is to make a society in which more people are capable of doing it, which means which is going back to the fundamental things of human nature, education or stillness or being open to things or developing your senses the same things as we were trying to improve 5,000 years ago. So that's all. We don't need any particular kind of thing. One day we'll realize we need UI designers. We'll have UI designers.
No, but what do you think? Sort of, what would you like to have as like just this setup rather than a particular type of people?
Human capability. You want everybody to be better educated. You want everybody to grow up with an understanding and a response towards their environment, towards the things they use. This will enable the designer in everybody. And it's a very fundamental thing. Design is not a new thing. It's just been labeled recently.
Repackaged maybe.
Yeah, and it'll get repackaged and depackaged and then opened out. Then we'll call them specializations. Then we'll group them, and then we'll call that a generalization or a new specialization. ये चलता ही रहेगा.
And Lisa, your thoughts?
No, I just think from where I am today in my life, I would like just the community itself to be a little more intellectually stimulated, if I may say so. I just think that everybody should do what they are doing and what they find comfort and everything. But I think as a community, we should be a little more, looking inwards, finding things, questioning things,
Self-critiquing.
self-critiquing, talking to each other more often, more frankly. And generally, I think there has been a little bit of lull in the intellectual stimuli of the community. Somehow everybody seems, or maybe I am doing that, so it seems like that to me, but trying to do, very tightly driven projects with an end result. Nothing is a little open for criticism or discussion or pondering. I miss that. I miss that about design. There was a time when one could, from various disciplines, pull up things and look at it and ponder about it and think about it.
Maybe, Lisa, more conversations like these.
Yeah.
Maybe even looking deeper into, what.
We need more Kedar.
Wow,
Yes, we
thank you.
definitely need more Kedar. That's what I said, that I wanted to meet him more than him wanting to. Because it's very important that that stimuli is injected in college level, in school level, maybe in studio levels. It's not waiting for one event to happen one year, but more around kind of a thing. Because what I'm finding is that everybody is at that urgency to settle down into something that can be predicted, which is understandable, but it makes me uncomfortable.
Correct. Yeah, I think.
I want to start a design school which accepts students at the age of 6 and teaches all other disciplines through design.
Yeah, it's one of my dreams. Like
including physics and chemistry and geography and poetry and comedy and
everything.
whatever
Yeah,
else. Whatever else you want to learn, the basic frame is design. Right now, if I ask what is the basic frame of a school, it is to produce employable people by corporate sector. It is a sort of high-end clerical goal.
And that has been pretty much for last 75 years now. I mean, since
that's the basis of the school, right? I mean, earlier schools were meant for in the 17th century, schools were meant for rich people's kids to learn to rule, because they were making future rulers. So the ruling classes. In the 20th century, it's not the ruling classes, it's the office-going classes. So, हम लोग architecture में यही बोलते थे that we are being trained that we would become a junior architect in a large practice and learn the rest of the things. So, अब is this the only way to approach education? Why not say that schools are really design schools? They could be.
एब्सोल्युटली. एक काम करते हैं आज, इसी नोट पे एंड करते हैं, स्टार्ट करते हैं डिज़ाइन स्कूल, एंड ऑल्सो वुड लाइक you guys to have like come again on Audiogyan and talk about education of design. Maybe that would be interesting. So yeah, thanks a lot Itu and Lisa for giving your time. It was real honor, lot of stimulus and lot of food for thought in the conversation. Thanks for giving your time.
Thank you for having us. We had a great time.
Honor is entirely mine.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.
Hello! It's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On This Round is on Me, Gauri is joined by Shweta Nanda. They talk about the financial independence and how it is to be a woman entrepreneur. On Anish Thing, Anish welcomes ultra-marathon runner Shivani Gharat. Shivani shares her journey of how she ran her first marathon, the mindset of a runner, and what it actually takes to run a full marathon. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Naveen, Akash and Shreyas talk about the Korean band BTS serving in the military and its repercussions. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Wing Greens and their latest acquisitions and about the Indian sexual wellness market. And on Shunya One, Sheila Datya is joined by Dinika Bhatia, CEO and founder of Nuttigritties. They talk about coming from a business family and Dinika's journey in creating healthy and guilt-free snacking. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting new merch out there for you. Also, do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do remember to spread the word about these shows and any other shows you might be listening to. Appreciate them, rate them, and review them wherever you are listening to them. You can also check out all our other shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week. Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, Kotak Privy League Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thanks guys, without you this would not be possible.
Do you often find yourself surrounded by conversations about Web3, blockchain, NFTs, DAOs? What are these terms and how do they affect our future on the internet? So many questions, but don't worry, we've got answers to all your questions. Hi, I'm Eklavya Bhattacharya, and on our show Future Proofing, we try to decode the impact of these future technologies on various industries with experts and tech enthusiasts. Tune into new episodes coming out every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app and the website, or wherever you get your podcasts from.